Yeah.
Sean, you good to go?
I'm ready. Yeah, I'm ready. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yep.
Cool. Are
we gonna
All
do one of
right.
those things where like we use that stuff while we're getting ready, so it sounds really natural. So all that's gonna be it, right?
Sure, whatever you want, man.
Okay, whatever. Go for it.
You start.
No,
it.
go ahead. All right, I'll start. So I'm Sky,
I'm Janson.
And I'm Sean.
and this is the weekly pop-up where we discuss all things pop culture. And my goodness, do we have an episode for you guys?
First of all, we're back.
Yeah.
We are back, boys. It's been a while.
We're back. We're back.
And as we've said on social media, which if you don't follow us, feel free to. But we apologize. But Sean and I had a couple things going on. Just
Yeah. Couple
lame.
small children.
How many seconds of The Boys Are Back in Town can you play without paying licensing? 12 seconds, right? Okay, right now.
I
Go.
think
The boys are back in town. The boys are back in town.
12. Let's just go. Let's just cut in some boys who are back in town.
the boys
we'll
are
jump
back
back
in
in.
town.
Yeah.
And you hear a fourth voice, Sky, don't you? Because we have a very special guest for our return.
I do. Yeah. So we are here with the director of one of the hottest documentaries out right now, and it's on HBO, with the director Seth Porges, who directed Class Action Park. Hey, so co-director, gotta give the props to my friend Chris as always, and minor correction, HBO Max.
I knew it. I was gonna ask
There
if
it
it
was.
was. I was gonna ask if it was just Max. Yeah,
There's
I
like
thought
four
so,
different HBOs now. Well, it's not HBO Min, it's like
Yeah.
it's like that that brand
All
name,
the
the
way
focus
to the
groups.
top.
Yeah, people were like, this whole HBO minimum thing, it just doesn't, it's not hidden. So
Well,
Max.
the three of us might be able to disparage their marketing of how they've rolled everything out. I don't think Seth, who just had a movie come out on there, is going to
No,
take
I'm
those
not
liberties.
touching that.
Yeah, exactly. First of all,
Yeah.
you have at least 2 subscribers here, just so we're all clear.
Yeah.
Big
Yeah.
HBO Max fan. I think 3.
Yeah.
Like we
Yeah,
all love
Me
it.
too.
It's
Yeah.
the best. It's got like Studio Ghibli or Ghibli. Yeah. There goes all my nerd cred right there.
All your credit out the window.
It's gone. Studio Ghibli. Oh my god. No, it's got that. It's kind of amazing actually.
The
Yeah.
DC stuff has really
The
been
DC stuff,
like
yeah.
surprisingly like I've really been like, oh, this is because I think that. Go
If
ahead.
you haven't poked around the like Turner Classic Movie stuff, it's amazing because like as happens, it's like when you go to an oldie station and Guns N' Roses pops on and you're like, what's an oldie now? It's like what's a
I
classic
bet.
movie now? Yeah.
Like,
and
why
it's
is
like,
Back to the Future on here?
Yeah, exactly. It's like Secret of My Success starring Michael J. Fox. It's like back in my day, was it just like old black and white movies? And now it's like 80s comedies or classic movies. Yeah, I love it. It's great.
Right.
That's awesome. And so, again, thank you so much for joining us. We're really excited to come back with such a bang. And you were just so welcoming on social media. You actually
so
story is
lovely.
not funny as
Somebody talk to me.
It was the funniest interaction because for those that don't know, I have been tweeting a lot of reviews of movies lately because ever since quarantine, honestly, on my lunch break, an hour a day, I just watch a part of a movie if I can. And so I tweeted that I enjoyed the movie. Let's all be clear. It was a 7 out of 10. And you commented or you favorited it. And then I actually screenshotted the tweet and sent it to Sky. I was like, bro, look at this. And then Sky tweeted back, like, I'm just laughing because he favored your tweet of you like liking the movie. And then I was like, oh, and then you responded and I said, if you ever want to come on the podcast, and you said, sure. So again, we like really appreciate that.
Yeah, no, as I said, like a 7 out of 10 is like a 10 out of 10 when you have a movie that is kind of upsetting. So I feel like. so yeah, I'll take it.
And
it's pretty deep. Yeah,
it does. It does. And we definitely want to get into the movie, but I think first, tell us a little bit about like how you get to that point, how you got to the documentary. I know you've done a lot of stuff for a long time. So give us a little background on, some of the things you've done, some of maybe the highlights. Cause again, I just feel like you could probably go for the whole hour just talking about the cool things you've done. So we'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, I'm going to try my best not to kind of go into like the autopilot robot mode of the question, like the guy in
resume
on a press junket who you can tell it's interview number 20 asking what it's like to work with his co-star. And it's like, or who are your influences? No, I went to Action Park as a kid a couple times. wow.
you don't really forget Action Park. It just sticks with you. And I was like super young, so as I like to say, like these memories, as you get older, it was really kind of unclear to me what I was actually remembering and what might have been something I saw in like a Looney Tunes cartoon that had seeped its way into my imagination. And so the purpose of not just this project, but like some of the other work I'd done reporting on investigating Action Park, and I've been writing about the topic for more than a decade now to some various capacities, was really to kind of fact check my memories and figure out like what was real. Because when you're 6 years old and you see a looping water slide, you really don't know as you get older if you actually saw that or you saw like Bugs Bunny do something like that.
Absolutely. When you fall off like a small hill as a child, you're like, that was 20 feet high.
Yeah, everything
and you
seems
go
big.
back. You go back to the
Yeah.
hill, and it's like, oh, that was like 3 feet.
Or
But-
you're like, Goonies was a good movie, and then you get older and you're like, Goonies was not a good movie.
but with Action
Yeah.
Park, it seems your memories held up.
Well, the thing that's so strange about Action Park, what makes it so worthy of conversation and making a movie out of it, is not only was it all true, but it's like it was 10 times crazier than I ever could have imagined. I was walking around, I didn't know anything about the backstory. All I saw was a bunch of strange rides and atmosphere of debauchery and chaos, and a sense that like, oh, these are things that actually could hurt you. But when you're super young, when you go to an amusement park, this idea of like fear and terror and possible danger is, talk about this in the movie a little bit, it's kind of baked into the story. Like you go to Tower of Terror and you're 6 years old, part of you is scared that thing is actually falling, that ghost is real, something's actually going to happen. And when you're at the same age, when you go to Action Park and you're seeing people actually get hurt, it's really not that easy to distinguish between the two things. And what made Action Park so different was, unlike Disney World, where the terror and the fear is a story that's being imagineered and told to you, at Action Park it was very, very real.
And I've got to be honest with you, I'm still afraid of Tower of Terror, not because
That's
of
a
the
great ride.
ghosts, but
Yeah.
just the ups and downs. And so
over it,
Janson
man.
is not a
Not a ride
thrill
guy.
seeker in terms of the ride.
Oh, you would have had a good time at Action Park.
I would have. I would have been peer pressured by these two guys to be like, jump.
That Action Park was the the theme of like Knott's Berry Farm. It's like the Old West. The theme of Action Park was peer pressure. Like it really was. But a bunch of teenagers from New Jersey. That's what it was. It was like you were put in. It's like when you go to the top of a ski lift and you're at a hill that's like way too high. You shouldn't be going down this, and part of you is like, I can't do it, but then you make yourself do it, and hopefully you come out okay. People could of course get hurt. Every ride at Action Park was like that. We were like, I should not do this. This is not, I just saw somebody get hurt. Like, this is not good. And then you have all of New Jersey screaming at you like, you win, you better do that. And you better do that, or else when you get back to school, you're going to hear about it.
But at least on a ski, you can do pizza the whole way down. You can just
You can do pizza, French fries pizza.
You can do pizza the whole way down. Now, to get to this point in your career, you were a journalist prior to this, right? You've been doing things.
I like to think
things
I
of this
still am
a long
little
time.
bit.
Of course,
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah.
But before making big time movies, what'd you do before that?
Yeah, I was a magazine editor for most of my career. So I worked at Popular Mechanics magazine for a number of years. I worked at Maxim magazine. And what's fun about working at places like that is you kind of got to explore really cool stuff, So like something neat is happening. That could be an article for Popular Mechanics, could be an article for Maxim. You have the freedom to dig into these weird, fun, crazy topics. And that's, how I started the first kind of research Action Park in like a real serious sense, was when I worked at Popular Mechanics and viewed it as like a Popular Mechanics story, really.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you remember your first memory of Action Park? Can you recall it?
Yeah. I remember a lot about a day, and I probably went there twice, not many times. And I went to a lot of theme parks as a kid and as an adult. We went to, that's like what we did in my family. We went to Disney World. We went to Universal Studios. We went to Busch Gardens. And then we go to Action Park a couple times. And it was just so different because the rides were literally like ripped from your imagination. When you're like 7 or 8 years old, you're like, I had a dream that was possible. And here it is in front of me. It doesn't seem real, So I remember, you remember going down the Alpine slide. I went down to Kittywood because you take the ski lift up to the top of the Alpine slide. And to clarify for people who aren't aware, the Alpine slide is a bobsled track made out of a mixture of fiberglass, concrete, and asbestos, in which you're given this really rickety sled to go down, and you have a joystick that would either be a brake or accelerate depending on how you move the joystick, never worked. So your brake either didn't work or or the other way around, and you have like a 1-lane track. Somebody's going to hit somebody. So you're going up to the top, and you would just literally see like the carcasses of discarded alpine slide carts where people had crashed. See people standing up and just getting up and picking their stuff. Like, you don't get up in the middle of a ride at Disney World. People are just getting up in the middle of their ride, standing up in the middle of it. They're spitting down at people below from the ski lift. And what we found out while researching the movie was it's also a fairly regular occurrence for people on the ski lift to literally take their carts that are attached to the ski lift, throw them off their ski lift so they would try to hit people below.
Jesus.
Which is so stupid. Just so stupid.
Such a
also,
teen thing
so
to do.
New Jersey.
So New Jersey. And so all this was going on. I remember just sense of chaos. I remember, the very first thing you see when you walk up to the park is this looping water slide. It's there greeting you. And so there's no mistaking this is different, because that thing shouldn't be. That should not be. And even just in the air, when you're walking around Action Park, you can feel the legend and the urban legends, the rumors kind of happening in real time. Like, you'll see people going down a looping water slide, and you'd ask, like, is that open? And they say, no, those are only employees. And you'd be like, why isn't it open? And you hear some variation of some kid got stuck, some kid lost his, broke his face, like things like that, just in real time. And this legend grows and grows and grows in real time. It's all true. It's what's so weird about it. It's all true.
Well, you go down a slip and slide, and it's scary enough when someone stops too soon.
Those things are dangerous.
Just a slip and slide, though. You're just going down your own back. You're in your own backyard going down.
They don't do those anymore. That's like up there with lawn darts now. It's like things that people are like, we don't let kids go on slip and slides anymore. People, you don't put enough water in a slip and slide, you're gonna hurt.
Well, and I remember in college, one of my friends stopped too early, and therefore he ended up with an indentation of a tooth on the bottom of his foot. 'Cause my other friend slammed into him.
No,
but
man.
I mean, I can imagine, like, that's bad enough. I can't imagine doing that on a like concrete slide with a sled in hand and just being like, I'm about to slam into 30 other guys right now.
And everything they had, it was like the more extreme version of something you'd seen elsewhere. So, okay, you've been on a slip and slide. They had this ride called Surf Hill, which is basically a slip and slide on a mountainside, and you take a mat and you go down. And the original concept for the ride, as we say in the movie, was you're going to jump off of a cliff, and this slip and slide mat downhill ramp was going to catch you on your way. That was their idea. They couldn't find anywhere to build it, so they didn't do it. But then they built this thing, Surf Hill, and the employees they realized you kind of lift up this, just like a foam tarp. You can lift it up and you start putting either other mats or trash cans even underneath it to be able to jump. So the employees start building this jump and making it bigger and bigger and bigger. So one lane on the far side, just have a big jump. And there's footage of people going up this jump. They're getting crazy air, and eventually somebody broke their neck off of that. And I actually found a newspaper article about that. But it was a favorite place for employees and park management to hang out. They actually built kind of an observation area around this because people would lose their swimsuits all the time on that thing, all the time.
Wow.
The key place for teenage observation day.
Yes. Yes.
One of the questions I had, just because I had watched this with my wife, and it kind of takes you through just the first 45 minutes. I mean, both our mouths are wide open just because, like, how is this even a thing that was allowed to happen? But
Sure.
One of the coolest parts of the documentary to me was all like this handheld, like almost behind the scenes footage. How did you guys come across that? Like, where did you guys get all that stuff from?
It was a treasure hunt. The archival footage, I mean, I think we just kind of really lucked out with a lot of it, but it was a big long-term treasure hunt. Some of it showed up in our inboxes. I've been sort of immersed in the action park world for a number of years now. I made a short about the topic in 2013. And so I had a lot of people reaching out to me with stories, in some cases footage. And whenever people reach out to me who are former employees or whatnot, I'd ask them if they had any footage, and sometimes they would. A lot of it came, one of the kind of holy grails of action park footage, which is now widely available, but for a long time nobody had ever seen, was video of the Cannonball Loop, which is the looping tube water slide in action. And the story behind that is actually really cool. A former park manager, effectively, had been digging through his garage 4 years ago, and he found a VHS tape that just said Action Park on it. He popped it in. Lo and behold, it's just footage he had taken while walking around the park with the video camera, including this footage of the looping water slide. A lot of it, some of it came from old Action Park TV commercials. There was an episode of MTV's Headbangers Ball that was filmed there. And then we also just kind of put the bat signal up, posted on social and reached out to people who I knew from the area, Facebook groups of former Action Park employees or people, alumni of the local high school, like that kind of stuff, saying who has got footage, and stuff started coming in.
And I got two questions. Well, one's more of a explain that more, because I think we kind of passed through it. The cannonball loop. I really want you to kind of describe that to people, because to me, I would describe it as, those Hot Wheels you had as a kid that go around a loop. So I'd love for you to kind of touch on that for a second, so that people who haven't seen it yet can kind of really hear what that is. And then secondly, tell us how long it took to make this thing. Obviously, it's been a decades-long thing, as you said, but also I'd love to hear the 8 days before story.
Sure thing. So the Cannonball Loop was an enclosed tube water slide that you would climb to the top of a series of stairs, and you go down a tube that was a little steeper than your average tube, and at the bottom of it, based nothing off of the sheer momentum that you built from going down the slide, it would go into a gigantic, maybe 20 or 30 foot loop. And typically, like a roller coaster would, or a Hot Wheels track. When you're in a roller coaster, you're on a track, you have braces and retainers kind of holding you in place. You're in a water slide, you're free falling, baby. And the problem with that is that nobody's body works the same in a water slide. People are different sizes, shapes, weights, wetnesses, whatever it's going to be, the water flow, the friction, everything's different. And so getting this thing to work proved an ongoing challenge. They never got it to work right, just because the variables between riders were so inconsistent. And so people were frequently not making it through, getting stuck, bashing their, they get to the top of the loop and they just face plant down. If you watch the video footage, people going through the loop, they go in facing one way and they come out facing another way. And that's very confusing. It kind of hurts their brain when you're like, what mysteries does this loop hold? What goes on? What secrets occur
Time and
inside
space in there?
Yeah. And even like people go through it, they tell you like you get to the top and you kind of fall at the top of the loop onto this thing. And then you don't know which way you're facing. You're all turned around and you could be kind of sitting at the top of the circle. And it's like, which way am I going to go out? If you go out the wrong way, you're stuck. You have to go out the hatch.
Was that the ride with the teeth?
That was the ride with the teeth. Yeah. So the first
that was gruesome. That was gruesome.
It's the stuff of nightmares. It's Lovecraftian. Yeah. They put some kids through there and they didn't have sufficient padding. So a bunch of people coming out with just busted mouths and missing teeth. So they go in and they add some more padding, send some more kids on. These kids come out, mouths are fine, but they got lacerations all over their body. Wow. Open up the tube. Teeth from the first group had gotten embedded in the padding and was just ripping into these people and eating them up like some sort of dune sandworm.
I pointed at you because we love Lovecraft Country here.
Okay, cool.
The thing about the looping water slide, like any water slide, even the ones that are just kind of like corkscrew, like you never see the edge of it, right? So you're just like, you're hoping that you're fine. To imagine myself going this way, like up over myself, like I would never ride something like that ever again. But maybe I would if I was, 14 or younger or whatever.
Trying to impress the babes,
everything,
bro.
Well, everything with Action Park is like this. That's so dangerous. I would never ride it. But like, if you survive it, it could be like the coolest thing you've ever done.
Oh, everybody went through that. That's a story they're telling to this day. And I mean, we talked about it in the movie, but in order to get kids to go through it, to serve as test pilots as they tried to perfect it, the owner would stand at the ride and just wave $100 bills in the air, and anybody want $100 would go down. But we didn't get into in the movie is that was actually only true for the older teenage employees. The younger kids were only given $50. So
capitalism at its finest.
Exactly, exploiting child labor.
Now, Seth, did you go down the slide?
No, I say it wasn't open when I was there. I did see employees go through it, but I was told that some kid got stuck. And I wasn't going down the adult track on the Alpine. I wasn't jumping off the cliff. I wasn't doing any. These things were, my eyes were like, this is too nuts for me, man. I would now maybe if I had a helmet on, I'd consider it, and a face mask. That's the thing is you don't want to smash your face. If I had a face mask, I'd consider it.
That's the money maker, man.
Football helmet. That's what it takes. Yeah.
And so you got to, before we, started, in our little incognito time, you told us that you had been very busy during quarantine because of this movie, but not because of, I mean, probably now because of press, because of it, but there was a different reason, at least at the start of quarantine. And what was that reason?
Yeah, no, we finished the movie like a week before you guys saw it. Like it was, I mean,
Same.
like this was down to the wire, but in like a good way. You know, I mean, we had cuts of it done, but we're perfectionists, and you know, nothing's done until it has to be done, right? Like, oh, just tinker and tinker and tinker, but really, like stuff just like it was a lot of just kind of incoming last minute media in terms of like photos and some videos were coming in that we had to get in because they're so good. So as I was telling you guys before, there's a shot in a movie when we talk about the alpine slide in which this girl kind of gleefully shows off her alpine slide wounds and has a big smile on her face, and it's eerie and creepy and amazing. That photo came in like 8 days maybe before the movie came out, and we just had to crash it in.
Sky, as someone who's going to screenwriting school, if one of your movies that you wrote was going to be done 8 days before it aired, how would you feel about that?
You know, as long as they had some cuts done, I think that's okay.
we had some backups ready to roll. Yeah, it just
So I
Well,
am
you
curious.
couldn't tell. You couldn't tell. So
No.
there you go.
I am curious though, like how much footage, you know, like if you could make a director's cut of this movie,
Mhm.
how long do you think it would be if you just put everything you wanted into it?
I don't think it would be any longer. I think that the brevity and the tightness of the film is a big part of why it works.
Yeah.
You know, we had earlier cuts that were 2 hours long and whatnot. There's a lot of stuff that wasn't clear. I mean, there's so many stories about Action Park. Everybody who went there has a story. But how many
Right.
stories you need to hear before you get the point? This place
true,
is crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, so the one thing that I felt like we needed to cut that maybe another world would have been in there was kind of a little bit more in, say, the Act 1, talking about the history of Vernon and also kind of the Wall Street years of the founder of the park. That stuff I find very interesting. But, you know, at the end of the day, like, this is a movie called Class Action Park. You want to get to the park as soon as you can. You know, we need to
Right.
get there. Like, we give
Yeah.
you enough information to understand things, and we get you to the park.
Yeah.
And tell us about kind of the way you guys laid it out, because really, as you said, the first act really, I would say almost hour in my head. I could be misremembering, but about the first hour is very light, very funny, kind of like we've
Mhm.
been talking. Keeps it very, this is crazy, but look what it was. And then, you know, you get that shift towards like people,
Wow.
like people died in this place.
Yeah.
Tell us about how you guys came up with that structure, and how why was that the best way you thought just to tell that story?
So if you look at anything that's out there about Action Park, including things I've written, videos I've done, anything out there, it's largely the Johnny Knoxville movie. It's largely kind of treated as a joke. It's this funny thing because it's so absurd that this place existed, and with good reason, because Action Park, everything about it is absurd and it makes you laugh. And you're not laughing because somebody made a joke. You're laughing because it scrambles your brain, because there's nothing else. There's no other response that works when you see things that make so little sense, that make you question how the world works so much. But that, you know, but Action Park has kind of become this punchline, this joke. And that I think really does obscure the fact that it was a place of great fun and joy for a lot of people. It's also a place of great tragedy and heartache and even death for others. And I think in order to properly address the dark side of Action Park, I think we really need to lean into the legend of it. And so our goal was to really put people who may not be familiar with Action Park in the mindset of people who are familiar with it. Because Action Park's something that has fans. And these are fans who, like myself, find it to be a hilarious, weird, wacky place. And I wanted everybody to be a fan of Action Park, just like all the fans are out there before they were hit with the reality. And I think it makes the reality hit so much harder because it kind of comes out of nowhere by design. And then you become the response we wanted, which is one that is, I think, made some people uncomfortable. And I'm happy for that, is we want people to laugh and then kind of hate themselves for laughing, you know, feel very, very uncomfortable at their own actions, to question their own laughter. And we want people to question the jokiness of Action Park. And it's important too, because like the movie to some degree, and I don't think I'm giving anything away here, overanalyzing my own movie, is about nostalgia. It's about the way we look back at things that are kind of messed up and we laugh about them. And if the movie was just serious true crime investigative exploration of this place, that theme wouldn't have come through at all. And to me, the reason Action Park is interesting, the reason this movie is worth making, isn't just because of the things that happened, but because of the way Action Park kind of becomes this vessel for the way we transmit nostalgia and the way we look back at things, childhoods we had, that might have been really messed up or done things that were really weird or wrong, and we kind of laugh about them. And I thought that was really important to kind of tell the story through that really hard shift, if that makes sense.
God, when you
Yeah.
put it that way, I
Yeah.
regret the 7. I'm so sorry.
Oh, it's all right. No,
That-
if you gave it 7, that's serious. Like, I think some people were like, I felt uncomfortable. I didn't like that. And I said, good. Because you know, like, you're not supposed to feel comfortable. Like, we want to give people permission to laugh about Action Park. That first hour of the movie is supposed to be funny. We want to give people permission to laugh at Action Park. But if you're going to laugh at Action Park, you have to feel uncomfortable about it because people died there. If you're going to laugh at Action Park, you have to know what you're laughing at. And then at the end, I think you're allowed to kind of look back and say, I know all this. It's still messed up. I still need to laugh a little. And I think that's okay. You know, but
Yeah, no, go ahead. Continue. I'm sorry.
No, you go. Yeah.
So I think, a thing that brought up that laughter quite a bit was just how good of interviews you were able to get.
Yeah.
These people were amazing. Like
Chris Gethard, man, was
Absolutely.
he always
so
is,
great.
but I mean, God,
So
he
great.
was hilarious.
I guess, like, how did you go about getting these interviews? And did it just pretty much like come naturally, these stories?
You ask anybody who went to Action Park or worked at Action Park, you get the feeling that the past 30 years they've been waiting to tell stories about Action Park. They're like, let me tell you about the time, and you just kind of can't turn them off. It's such an amazing topic because as an interviewer, it makes you look like a genius when people see these things, when really it's a lot of like, go ahead and talk. And then the stories, the faucet just turns on, especially with somebody like Gethard, who, I must have asked him 3 questions and he just talked. It was amazing. Really, like, I felt like I was in the middle of a private concert from Mozart. It was amazing.
Yeah.
And then, as we kind of get further into production of the film, and further into the interviews of the film, and we know like there's things we need to hit on, then our questions become a little bit more focused. And we start asking, especially when, say, one employee references something, but they wouldn't go into detail with it because maybe they saw something and they feel like they shouldn't talk about it because it was a little scandalous or involves some criminal behavior. Then you have an interview another day with a different employee and you see you get a little bit more out of them on the same topic, and sometimes you do. So somebody might reference something that was very illegal or very dangerous or very wrong. They won't give you the whole story, but the next person does, as long as you kind of, lead with the semblance of lead them on a little bit.
I couldn't help but when the previous employees were talking, like, almost think they had some sort of like quasi Stockholm syndrome, because even one of them says, like, the people I know who work there hated working there, but we just kept coming back and coming back. And like, I couldn't help but think, like, if I was an employee and I was watching, 50 people get hurt a day or whatever one of those numbers were, like, how would I reconcile that? And I just think on a psychological level, that's like super interesting, because it really was just a bunch of teenagers running a park for a bunch of other teenagers.
Yeah, I think you described the 80s, which is, this shaped us into who we are. A lot of us are happy about who we became, but boy, was it, it was straight up traumatizing, man. It was straight up wrong. The town of Vernon and the people who are from the town of Vernon, the people who grew up going to Action Park, are such an interesting and often amazing group of people who I spend a lot of time talking to and still do. I'm in touch with a lot of former employees of Action Park. I'm in some of their like private Facebook groups and we talk all the time, and they all love the movie. And I'm glad about that. We didn't set out to please them, but I'm of course happy that they like the movie. But you really get the sense that that entire generation of kids from that town developed this real intense gallows humor about things, just how normal it was for them to see death, for them to see injuries in a way that like most of us can't even comprehend. And I oftentimes think about like how strange it must have been to be in this rural, bucolic small town. You get your summer job, I'm just going to make a couple bucks on the side, and you're presented with the darkness of death and destruction, humanity, corruption in front of you at age 14 or 15, and what that does to you. And I mean, it's not just the injuries at the park. I mean, this town was flooded with like up to 1 million visitors a year because this place became so popular. People coming from all the cities, from New York, from Philly, from Newark, kind of coming in, and all sorts of weird, wild stuff would happen just by virtue of 1 million people coming in. I spoke to people who were there when a tanker had an accident right outside the gates of the park. and like an oil or gas tanker, and the driver was in a cab, got trapped underneath the full tanker, and they couldn't use the jaws of life to remove him because it would have sparked and blown up. And so he knows he's about to die, and all these 16-year-old employees are looking on while he's giving his last words, and EMTs are giving him morphine through the window. And it's like, as a 16-year-old, what does that do to you to see those things? And it's so strange, and really like it scrambles your brain so much that the only reaction you can have that allows you to get through the day and live your life is to laugh about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you hear these people making jokes about Action Park, and they sound giddy and they sound nostalgic and they sound funny, that's what the laughter is. And I think that's really important to recognize, that these people aren't looking back as if everything about this place was good. They know it was wrong. They know it was messed up. But the only response you can have that allows you to get through the day is to laugh about
it. Yeah. I think, I mean, there's a comedian, Anthony Jeselnik, and I think that he forms his whole jokes by that. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So when you were making the documentary, how long do you think you worked on it? Like how far back does maybe like some of the earliest interviews go that made it into the final cut?
Yeah, so the there's two ways of kind of tracking that. One is, how long had I been researching this topic? And it's like, okay, 10 years. How long had I been making this movie? Year and a half. Last April, I'll tell you the whole story. Last April, I was in Las Vegas, and I was getting a drink with my friend Chris Charles Scott, who's my co-director on the project. And he's a documentary filmmaker and I'm a journalist, and we were talking and we were like, why haven't we made anything together? We should do this kind of thing. And he's just a really talented and scrappy filmmaker, knows how to do things quick, cheap, all the things we like.
That's the way to do it right there.
It's the way to do it. And we were talking, he's like, why haven't you done anything about that Action Park story? Because I talk about it all the time. You're like, you can't shut me up about Action Park. And right then and there, we're like, we're going to do this. And we had cameras rolling by Memorial Day. Wow. It was like that quick. And, we were in Vernon, and we shot in Vernon, New York over the pretty short period of time. And then spent a whole lot of time editing it all together, because this movie is largely kind of made in the edit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Do you think this sort of theme park could have survived anywhere but a small town?
Anywhere, but the question I often get is, could it exist today? And of course, the answer to that is absolutely not. So I'm glad you didn't ask that, because no.
I thought he was going to ask that. I really thought he was. I was like, come on.
But could it exist anywhere but a small town? That's interesting. And I don't think it's the size of the town is what allowed it to happen. I think it's the man, that's actually really interesting. I think it actually was a big part of it. It probably was a big part of it because the local economy being a small town became so dependent so quickly on it, on the jobs and the money and the tourism, that people might have been a little more, willing to look the other way about some of the problems with it. And I think that if it was in a more, let's just say, like diversified economy, like a big city might have, where you have manufacturing and retail and all this other kind of stuff, people might not have tolerated it in the same way. But when it becomes like the biggest employer in the area, yeah, they're probably get away with a little bit more. That's a great question.
Great job, Sean.
Yeah.
Now, a park, exists still. Or a resort. I know it went through several things right there at the end. What happened after quote unquote Action Park shut down? That happened in the 90s, is that right? When the original
96, I think.
Yeah. So the park shuts down in 96. It basically doesn't open for the 97 season. The parent company went bankrupt. 98, a company called Interwest, which is best known for being the parent company behind Whistler Mountain, just like a big ski resort chain, basically, buys it up, mostly for the ski resorts. They had a big ski resort on site as well. And Action Park was built as sort of a summer attraction for the ski resort. They buy it up. They strip out all of the motor world attractions, so like the racing cars, the speedboats. They take out all the crazy water slides. What you're left with is a much smaller water park. And that was called Mountain Creek Water Park. Some of the original rides were left intact, things like the cliff dives, Colorado River Ride. Those are still there to this day. So 98, Interwest buys it. 2010, a group of investors repurchases it. That group of investors was led by Gene Mulvihill, the original founder and owner of the park. So 2 years before he died in 2012, he repurchased Action Park, which is a really amazing kind of
full circle.
Yeah, into his story there. His family controlled it for a number of years. In 2014, after Gene passed away, his son, in charge at that point, renamed it Action Park to kind of cash in on this growing sense of nostalgia that was kind of popping up associated with the park after I put out a short on the topic. Apparently was told that's why they did it, which is really cool. So
making an impact. I mean,
yeah. So they reopened it under Action Park, get a lot of press because it's like, oh my goodness, Action Park's back. We're really just slapping another name on it. But they made somewhat of an effort to kind of bring the action back, if you will. Their slogan at the time was "All of the thrills, none of the spills," and
that's awesome.
They announced plans to build a new looping water slide that was not built. And soon after that, they kind of sell the park to some other owners. It passes a couple times until 2018 ended up in the hands of local resident Joe Hessian, who is in our movie, who was a 14-year-old employee at the park, as a kid, and worked for Gene for a number of years. And Joe, nobody has anything but good things to say about Joe. Just like really the best dude in the world, and somebody who I think has a really great vision for the place. The park is a really interesting water park. If you guys ever do want to go to a water park in the Northeast, I can't imagine a better one to go to. What makes it kind of cool is, you go to most water parks and it's like basically a parking lot with some towers and water slides, like it's real cementy kind of concrete jungle. This is built into a natural mountainside, and a lot of the rides use like the natural slope of a mountain, and it feels really natural. Like you'll see wild animals running around, and there's a lot of shade, and it's just like a much more pleasant place to hang out.
Yeah, and I remember too, like when you're going down the slide in Action Park and you would hit this water and it's 100 degrees outside, but you hit the water and it's so cold because it's like a natural
Did you go to
stream.
Action Park?
No, I didn't go. No, I was I watched your movie.
You felt like you were there. Yeah.
Yeah, I felt like I was there.
We had I grew up in the mountains of North Carolina, and we have a place called Sliding Rock. And it's literally just a giant rock, like 30, 40 feet long. It's just all natural. The water's running down and it's a giant water slide. But that exact feeling that you talk about in the movie of you hit the water and people go into actual shock because it's so cold, it's the exact same thing. Now, granted, I'm kind of told what's going to happen. I know I'm in like a river in the mountains of North Carolina, whereas, as you said, it's 100 degrees outside at a water park. I'm not expecting bath water, but you're also not expecting 20 degrees.
Yeah, a lot of those areas were shaded too. So it'd be natural, like unchlorinated, spring-fed areas that would be shaded, and they were absolutely ice cold. Wow. And you say like you knew what to expect. A lot of the problems from Action Park came from people not knowing what to expect. It had this reputation as being a place where there were no rules, utter chaos. So busloads of kids would come in from the city and just go crazy. And an alarming number of people at the park had absolutely no idea how to swim. Just an alarming number. And so people were just constantly getting pulled out from these very intense, very extreme rides, made worse by the fact that a sizable chunk of them had no idea how to swim.
So now, one of my sorry, okay.
No,
one of my favorite parts, and I don't want to talk about it too much because I do want people to watch this and see it for the first time. I don't want to give away too much, but the new park, I'm guessing, has first aid, right? Like they have great first aid kits.
They don't need it that much too, because like just people,
right? Because it's safer.
Amazing. It's amazing what happens when like rides are inspected and people go down water slides one at a time instead of 30 kids down a tube at one. Like it's amazing how that makes a difference in the safety record. Yeah. No, the new park's perfectly safe as far as a water park goes, and the lifeguards are very attentive. But it's kind of fun because if you've seen the movie and you walk around the new park, you'll get like a real sense. It's like watching a Ken Burns like Civil War documentary and then going to Gettysburg. Like you get a sense of like you're walking through history, and the place is totally haunted.
Oh, it definitely makes me want to like visit for sure. I rode go-karts this past weekend that were 55 miles an hour, and I was like, God, I'm glad there's not a highway running right through the middle of this thing.
And a big beer tent.
Yes, exactly.
That's right.
One of my favorite lines when the guy says, like, the design was flawed because the racing cars are right next to the beer tent.
Horrible design.
Horrible
but that's
design.
also, it's like, Now, as an adult, that is something I would do, though. I'd be like,
Right.
let's go have a beer and then go get on go-karts. Maybe not
A
6
beer.
of them. Yes,
A
a
beer.
A
beer.
A beer.
Well, one of my questions was, you talked about the reception from the town, and they all
Yeah.
love it, and past workers. What's the reception been like overall, and what's it been like for you? I mean, you have a movie on HBOMax, the biggest and newest streaming service. I know you've done big things, like you worked for Maxim, and you're on
nothing
TV.
like this. Let's be real.
But
Like,
yeah, I mean, this
nothing like
this
this.
is a
Yeah.
full-length
This
documentary
is
movie.
huge.
What's it been like for you?
Well, I want to thank my family.
There it is.
It's it's great. It's really great. It's surreal and weird if you want to know the truth, because I'm doing Zoom calls and whatever else, and the only bit
With
of
3 Hicks from North Carolina, you've never been.
Hey, I'm half Hick, half Jersey, so it's fine. But mom's from the Ozarks. But it's weird and it's surreal because it doesn't feel real. And the only thing that's different is my Twitter feed is more activity going on. And, it's like a lot more notifications than I used to get. And a lot of congratulatory emails. But other than that, like, my life hasn't changed. There's no parties to go to. There's no, glad handing happening, but it's pretty great otherwise.
It's if you got to think of a way to spend a quarantine, I have to imagine premiering a movie is not a bad way to do it.
It's a great way to stay busy too, like just having something to work on. Clearly a lot of people, having, employment can be scarce right now. And I feel super blessed and super lucky that I just had something to keep me busy, obviously.
So it has been received very positively.
Yes. 95% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Wow.
Look at
that.
Isn't that better than the 7 out of 10?
It is.
My favorite is when RogerEbert.com gave us 3.5 out of 4 stars, and they gave Tenet 3 stars. I'm like, made a better movie than Tenet.
There you go.
There you go.
Well, I was gonna follow up my question with what happens next, but I think you just stopped there, right? Like you beat. Tenet,
I just hang it.
It's over.
Like George Costanza, you end on top. I can't tell you what I'm working on next.
Yeah, no, I get that. But you are working on something next, right? Like there's going to be another thing.
I've got a couple things kind of brewing. I'm not sure which is going to strike first, if I'm going to be honest. But I enjoyed this a lot, and I had a really great experience. And I think I put together like a really cool team of people to work with too,
Right.
So I can get my nice little merry band of collaborators.
That's incredible,
great.
man. And that's awesome that, similar to the gentleman who worked there and grew up and like brought it full circle and now owns the park. That's, it's
that's
just
the guy who told us the story about Gene using a fake taser to scare people away from a fake cattle prod to keep people from cutting the line on the lift.
Which is insane.
I spoke to 3 different people who saw that happen, by the way. Wow. It was wild. Like, not made up.
Sources confirm. Yeah.
3 different people. Yeah.
But it's just incredible how it just comes full circle like that. Like, I'm trying to think of what, like as a little kid, you do something and then you're like, one day I'm going to like make a movie on this.
It's so wild to think like back to the day I went to Action Park twice. I remember one of those 2 times.
Mm-hmm.
The other, I was too young to remember anything. And it's so amazing to think back, like how important that day ended up being in my life. Like that, like just random day was one that drove that really proved a linchpin in what I would end up doing. It's kind of amazing.
God, we get so deep on this show sometimes.
We're so deep. It's cheaper than therapy. Right?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. So.
Sean, I see you're back. You've joined us.
Hey, Sean.
Yeah, sorry about that. The phone I'm using just straight up died because I thought I had it plugged in an extension cord and it wasn't plugged into a wall.
Sean, ask me a question that you think these guys might have already asked me, and while you're off, and we'll see if it matches.
A question that they already asked you. What's next for you? Like,
You'll have to.
I need to work on my questions.
You'll have to listen to the podcast to find out. Is what you'll have to do.
What a deep tease! I love it.
Yeah, because we already went over that.
I guess Sean is the better question asker because me and Sky just ask routine questions. There you go.
Yeah.
Sean, do
you
you have
gotta
one?
throw people off.
That's right.
Throw them off. Yeah.
I do actually have one.
Ooh.
Is there any part of you that's like a little disappointed that this came out during a quarantine when you couldn't get like, the usual like pomp and circumstance everything else.
I think quite the opposite. I think that the reason this movie struck a chord it did is because it's during quarantine. I mean, this is a movie. It draw whatever conclusions you want about the allegorical nature of Action Park and what it may or may not be a metaphor for. Clearly, a place in which the forces of fun run up against the forces of safety and saving lives has some tickle something for people right now. Right.
Did you just talk about 2020 or Action Park?
I don't know, man. You decide for yourself. But I think a lot about what we're going through right now is why the movie struck how it did. In particular, because we're all watching a lot of stuff right now, man. We're all watching a lot of stuff, and to some degree, we're running out of stuff to watch. So I'm happy to be there to give you something for 90 minutes.
And my other question was, did it irk you at all that Johnny Knoxville made a movie first? Because I think some people draw a correlation between the two.
If I'm going to be honest, it ended up, I'm really glad he did. I'm really, really glad he did, because if he hadn't done that movie, somebody else would have made a documentary first, is what I feel like.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad. I'm glad he did. I mean, I think that it's nice that there's something where people can be like, holy crap, that was real. And then like see this crazy true story. No, I got no beef with Johnny.
Did you speak to him during this process at all?
No.
I didn't know. Yeah.
Was there anybody that you were hoping to interview that it just like didn't work out timing wise, or just they weren't interested in talking?
It was less that than people being in like other parts of the country. And we were, for time and budget, all that kind of stuff, we're a scrappy crew. We were kind of being really efficient. And it's a 90-minute movie. How many interviews can you really do? But there were people like I had the employee who was there when Trump visited the park and spoke to him as he was considering buying Action Park. It would have been great to actually feature that person in a movie. They were on the other side of the country and we just couldn't make it work. Like stuff like that would have been great.
Which, by the way, I think like an hour and a half documentary for me personally is like the best length.
Yeah, a lot of these are too long, aren't they, man? Like
you get to 2 hours on a doc, and unless it's
or an 8-part series or something.
True.
Yeah.
It's like this could have been 4 parts.
Or one part.
Or one part. That's right. That's right. Well, I would take 6 more parts of Action.
Yeah. Thank you. It's better to give people less than they want than more than I think I have that right. Make them want more. Leave them wanting more.
Right.
No, I think a lot of docs are longer than they need to be. Doc series in particular. And for us, I think just this movie, yes, it's about this amusement park, but it's also about these emotions and this feeling and this and the conflict that is inherent to nostalgia. And for us to make that theme hit, I think we really needed a clean in and out emotional arc. We needed to make you laugh and then make you cry. And we weren't going to do that 8 times in succession. It really worked as a 90-minute movie.
Right. With the big interview, the mother, how difficult was that to get? Was she willing to talk? Was she open to it? How does she react to this documentary?
So we're pleased. They're the one people who I really did want to like the movie, and they do a lot.
Right.
They've watched it numerous times. They told us, and they are very, very happy with it. And that to me means a lot. I don't care what anybody else thinks about the movie. I'm glad they like it because they gave us some level of responsibility in telling their story. It was easy to get them to talk. They've been waiting for 40 years for somebody to ask them to talk. They told us that in 39 years, nobody had ever asked them what happened. And that was astonishing. So we got them on a plane from Florida, where they now live. They had to leave New Jersey because being in the backyard of where this incident occurred was emotionally draining.
Yeah.
And so they live in the Orlando area, and they flew up to New Jersey to talk with us. Wow. And again, you talk about a lot of people we couldn't do just because they were in other parts of the country or whatever else. We put them on a plane. We needed to make sure they were in this movie. And it was, you could just tell, I think you could tell when you watch the movie that this has been bottled up, that there's a lot of angst, a lot of anger, righteous anger that has been waiting to come out, and they've been waiting to tell their story. And I'm glad we were able to allow them to do that.
Yeah, it was powerful stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Sean, anything else? Any other mind-bending questions?
No mind-bending ones, but you had talked about editing the movie like up to 8 days before it came out. Was there? I know because we mentioned before that I edit for news, and sometimes I will get so fixated on just making this one part right. Right, like everything else is good, but this one part is bugging me. It's too quick, it's too slow, it doesn't look right. Was there one part in the movie that like really took up a lot of time? Like this has to be right. Like this isn't right. What are we doing wrong?
It's not that it took up a lot of time because there was something wrong with it. It's more just because we got the feeling it was too long, which was the beginning of the movie. Like in earlier versions of the movie, we spent a lot more time in Vernon. We spent a lot more time on Wall Street. And there's a couple key points we need to get across, and we needed to trim it down to as bare minimum as possible because we wanted to get to the park. So making sure that everything was clear, the points we need to make were made. And it's not like, and a lot of it's from these interviews. So it's not like we can just make it up like you're a screenwriter, like rewrite a scene. You got to kind of edit a little to make it work. But making that as tight as possible so that we could get to the park. So you had the information needed to get to the park, and then you could go to the park. That took up a lot of time.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, that's it. I'm out.
Yeah.
I've got all my questions.
Sean out. Yeah.
Sean out. Well, we don't want to take up too much of your time, Seth. And seriously, we truly, truly appreciate you coming by and hanging out with us. This has been a ton of fun. Just learning about how it all came together, and just getting to relive really the movie in my head. I'm ready to watch it again now.
Do it.
Because it was a great time. And so I think we're going to wrap it up. But folks, if you're listening to this, if you're maybe watching this since we're returning, absolutely check out Class Action Park on HBOMax. Seth Porges, a co-director. We're going to get that right. I want to give credit where credit's due. We just launched a Facebook page. We have a Twitter, of course. We'll put that in the show notes. But I think for now, we're going to wrap it up. And again, Seth, we really appreciate it.
Yes,
thank you so much.
Thank you.